Hello and welcome to the People Performance Podcast with me, Bernice Casserly.
And myself, Scott Morrison.
Hi, Scott.
Hello, Bernice.
This is a super exciting podcast for us.
Exclusive.
Yeah. Hot podcast for us.
Yeah.
Reason being?
The reason being, firstly, we've never actually done a podcast together. You keep avoiding me, which is fine. I don't take it personally. And secondly, it's a topic I don't think we've really discussed much in the past.
Yeah, but it ties into 100% everything that we do here at T2.
It definitely ties into a hot trend for us at the moment because we're getting more and more scope on this topic, and a lot of people are really asking questions about how it might work for them when we look at the clients that we have. So yeah, definitely something to dig into.
Yeah, definitely. So in regards to, I suppose, this particular podcast and what we're going to be discussing then. So I suppose it all comes from a little bit of research in an article that we found last week, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So here at T2, so we like to try and make sure that some of our podcasts do explore and go into some of the topics that we speak to clients about.
Yeah.
But also as well, I think it's really important just to kind of see what's going on in the industry at the moment. So just last week, we were taking a look at Harvard Business Review and came across an article. So this article is only a few days old. And the title of this is Why Offsites Work and How to Get the Most Out of Them.
And the question itself, what are offsites?
Yeah.
How do people view them? What's the thing? We asked Tom just off the top of his head, quick Tom, what do you think an offsite looks like, or what would it be to you? And he gave us a breakdown of where it's at, and he did it very well, to be fair, because it was like he'd already read it. But it's a definite view. And the question itself, what is an offsite? How might that look to different people? What might an expectation of an offsite be?
Yeah.
And is it a big, small, intimate, huge, big crowd affair? What would it be? So for me, if I look at what I believed it to be when you asked me the question first off the bat, was something away from your existing work environment, something that takes you to a new place of work, if that makes sense. So the offsite itself is coming away from your normal habitat, your normal place of work, and going somewhere new environment, new people, new learnings, potentially new teachers or coaches or mentors who are going to be thrown into that mix. And in the offsite, I think it triggers a number of different feelings and thoughts and comfort levels for different people too, right? So, how does that sit with people? What would trigger a good comfort zone and what triggers a negative comfort zone? So
yeah, because I think even just the word offsite, again, as you said there, it could mean so many different things to so many people. It is quite vague, and we can explore what that does really look like. But you're exactly right. For some people, just hearing that word or knowing that an offsite's been planned or they're going to an offsite, immediately for some people, they might be thinking, oh, okay, nice. I remember the last one. It was really fun. I really enjoyed it. For some people, it's a case of, oh, well, that makes me feel a bit anxious. I'm feeling a little bit kind of nervous. What's going to happen? What's expected? What's the reason for this? For some people, it's cortisol inducing, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And it's that scenario. So when we talk about what would we do to induce the right things, it's that comms, isn't it? It's that communication. It's the journey, placing the people on. I've definitely sat in what they would class as an offsite, but I wouldn't class it an offsite because it's in the T2 towers. I'm sat in our delivery room whilst the teams come in, and I've asked the questions, what we're expecting from today, what you're looking forward to. And I've had people sit there and go, well, I don't really know what we're doing today. And you can see from the body language, the tone, that they're not learning that message because a few of them in the room look uncomfortable. So then it's your job to sort of bring that vibe back into how do we get them feeling a bit more at ease. So it's definitely important and how we do it.
Really important. So with this particular article that we found that explores all of this in regards to the importance of offsites and why they work, they describe it as this. So an offsite is a company-sponsored, potentially a multi-day event that brings employees together outside of the office. I think real simple, nice definition. They then go on to expand on that, saying that it gives people opportunities for interactions that otherwise might not happen. And they create unique opportunities for employees to connect in person, potentially forming new relationships, but also strengthening existing ones.
And this might sound silly to say, but that's the bit I'd get excited about. That's the one thing an offsite should deliver or offer you in the least. That's the smallest part. It should be that as a minimum for me. And I think when we've obviously we've delivered a few over the last couple of years with clients. We've delivered our own. Obviously, we have the retreat, which we now do annually, but we've done a couple for different clients as well, tailored to their needs and their goals and what they're trying to deliver for the groups that obviously are in the session. But that interaction part that you're talking about, how do we meet new people, opening your network? How do you spread that gaze to different people with different skill sets, still within the same company or organization, but you never get that interaction, that one-to-one time, that ownership with them, and I think that's massive, right? It's definitely massive. So
just thinking about that, there's one particular client that I've been working with for the past 6 months. So I've been supporting their leadership development program. So it was a workshop offsite once a month or kind of every other month on the various different topics for discussion. And this particular group of individuals all worked for the same organisation, all based all over the UK in various different departments and roles, fairly large organisation. So it was interesting on that very first day when I think there was potentially, I think I had about 13, 14 individuals, and you could sense like the nervousness because there was a lot of people in that room who didn't know each other.
Right.
And to be able to then compare that very first morning to the fourth workshop that I ran with them 5 to 6 months later, you can just see the bonds that these people have gained. There were some people in that room who really did. They knew each other. They worked in the same department, but there was other people who, based on their role, they had never interacted with each other. And it might have been that they recognised the name off the org chart, but they didn't know that person. And that's the importance of just offsites in certain situations. You can even have people think that it's about teams who do work together. Not always.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. And I think when you look at that, sometimes it's the faces to the names.
Yeah.
You get people that are on a Teams call. There might be 25 people sometimes on there.
Yeah.
You see them in the top corner of your screen. You don't know them. You know, you've glanced past them. They might be in the same email chain as you, but it doesn't mean you have a natural connection, a bond, a communicate. You might never have even had a one-to-one conversation.
Yeah.
And similar to yourself, I'm working at the moment with a group of around 28 people. And early last month was the first time this group as a whole had been in the same place at the same time. Now, they're spread across 3 different sites and they're now working in trios, if you like, but they've got the same job titles across 3 different sites, doing the same job, but never really interacted fully with their counterparts or their team, if you like to call it that. And some of the feedback off the day of one of the ladies was like, I've really enjoyed today because whilst I know him by name and photo, today I got to sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah.
And we discussed we talk about some of the tools we use, and that was part of the day. So whilst walking through that tool, they were able to have a really in-depth conversation about where their values sit, integrity of emotion, or the passion behind the roles that they do, all of these different things. And they had so much in common, but they've been working together over 6 months and never actually had that type of conversation because it's always in passing for the subject or the topic that needed to be dealt with in that time frame rather than an actual one-to-one. So that day was really helpful. And it wasn't just how he felt that way, but putting those names together, that connection, and then being in a room with all of those great minds, that experience, sharing best practice, and just having the conversations. And sometimes even being in a position where they actually know we're all in it together, we're all going through the same thing, can really help form that bond.
Yeah.
Of right, where am I at? Am I on the odd seat here because everyone else seems to be going and thriving, whereas I'm struggling? In actual fact, everyone's climbing that same mountain.
Yeah. And something that people say to us so many times is the challenge when it comes to siloed working. And if you look at a large organization like that particular client that you're working with, but when there's that kind of distance, these people, they're doing the same job, but in 3 different locations, it's going to, if they're not connected, if they don't have any conversations or kind of good, strong bonds with each other, if they don't have that good, strong relationship, you're kind of going to expect a bit of siloed behavior, because how can you ensure that all 3 of those are working towards the same outcome, the same goal, being able to just share best practice?
Yeah.
So I really think it's fantastic that that client that you're working with has been able to recognize just the sheer value in being able to see that, right, okay, we've got these individuals do the same job in 3 different locations. Right, let's bring them together for the first time to try and kind of boost that bond.
Absolutely.
So important.
And we can talk about leadership all day long, and everyone's got an idea of leadership. The function here is collaborative leadership, sharing that same message and delivering the same goal. It's like a branded outcome, if you like, for these trios to work in. You can't do that work in siloed. You're going to have to really dig in and go beneath the layers. And these offsites, these workshops, these multi-day scenarios that we create and put out there, they're immense, because this is where people will immerse themselves in the other people's company and get to understand what really motivates these people, what gets them ticking, and interpersonal skills as well. You don't ask all of those questions when you don't have time in your 5 and moving towards a target. Who's the family? What's this about? What motivates you? What gets you out of bed any moment? What's your passion? What drives you on? You know, and I think that time to do that away from the workplace, away from people asking questions, away from people just knocking on the door, can I interrupt? I've got important. Because it's not that important, because when you're off-site, guess what? These things get looked after. They get taken care of. So bring in this collection of people that you've decided needs to be on this off-site, away from the workplace, away from the pressures of the workplace, to interact, to get a chance to be still and focus on themselves and the people around them in the learnings that we deliver, or whatever it is on the day, is massive for them.
Yeah.
It's massive. It's a real investment.
It's just that location. So, because just last week, working with a client, again, been supporting their emerging leaders development program. So these are kind of middle managers within an organization. Again, they're all based across and throughout the UK for this organization. It was their 4th workshop, brand new topic for them, so we're exploring the attributes. So really insightful, valuable day. However, the challenge that they had, and they even mentioned it in the feedback survey as well, was about the fact that it was hosted at head office. So I went to them. So rather than, because some clients come to us, don't they?
Yeah.
So I went to them to their head office.
Middle ground dirty sometimes as well. Yeah.
Yeah, but the challenge was that because it was at head office, distractions, even to the point where at one stage someone came in, they knew that we were on break, they came in, big discussion started, and it was all around kind of like travel and expenses. So just a kind of typical general conversation that happens at times. However, because of that visibility, because that person knew that there was individuals who were in that room on that day, they looked through the window on the door, saw that we were on a break and people were eating, and came in. And also as well, it's when people have that break, because there was another situation where someone was late coming back from break because someone had seen them, because they're not often at head office, because they're normally based in a different location. And it was a case of, hey, can I grab you for a few minutes? And this person, being a really nice, kind soul that they are, said, yeah, of course.
Absolutely.
And that kind of 2-minute conversation turns into 20, doesn't it? So it's really important to think about, actually, in order to generate impact and value, what is the location that we're going to use? Because, yeah, it's going to be more cost effective to have it on site. But if you want to really make sure that this investment...
You want to drive value. You want return on investment.
Exactly.
And that can be, like you say, coming away from the everyday pressures of the normal work location to find an independent space, Switzerland, if you like, where no one's, in the mix, and you've got your own time to think and all of that good stuff with the people around you. And the other side, as important, and it'll come up, I guess, in the research you've done, as important as doing the The location
Mm.
is the people that we invite.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like, who's in the room? Why are they in the room? What do they bring? What's our goal, and how does that work? So I guess one of the things about offsites is, how do we make it work? What is the return on investment? Why would you spend the money to take your full team away from the working day and the pressures that I might then leave back in the workplace to something like this? What would be the return on investment, as an example? So maybe we should look at what does a good offsite look like? What do you think it sort of consists of?
Yeah, and I think when it comes to what does a good offsite look like, I think you were spot on just a moment ago in saying, actually, what's the goal? What is it that you're trying to achieve? And in the article itself, it mentions around just the importance of actually having awareness on what is it that people need? Because so often it's a case of, oh, yes, the organisation wants development, or people just want an opportunity to just, sometimes that offsite is a strategic planning meeting.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to focus on achieving. But if we've not put in the work to identify the need and what that looks like, and even pause to consider, based on that need, how will we measure success? How do we know that this is the right solution?
Yeah.
Because that's another aspect, and
Sure.
as part of our consultancy job is to identify and find the best solution for our clients based on their needs. But that's really important. If we don't have that clarity on the goal or what we're trying to achieve, then sometimes people do view it as, oh, it's just a nice thing to do.
A jolly.
It's just a jolly. It's a good day, and we're able to enjoy it.
And I think, as an organisation that can spend whatever the amount of money would be in regards to the location, the travel, putting speakers on as an example, subject matter experts with experience that are coming in to really sort of talk you through, this is what we did within this time, this is what I did in my time, looking for marginal gains, all of that good stuff. But there's a cost to that. So it's really important that from the minute they step in the offsite to the moment they step off the offsite, what's their journey?
Yeah.
How have we mapped it? How have we started the day? How is the middle of the day? What's the storyboard going to look like to success? What's the blueprint to success for them? And how have we got the right topics, the right subject matter, the right people? It might be that some people need to be there and some people don't need to be there. And as a result of that, why are they the people that are in the room versus those that are not? That's key also, and really getting everybody in on that like-minded drive, to move things forward, rather than just having everybody in there because it's good to have everybody in there.
Yeah, and also as well, again, this comes down to the need. What is it that you're trying to achieve? So, for example, in some of the clients that we work with, they're within their team or just within the organisation, there might be high levels of psychological safety.
Absolutely.
But that said, sometimes it's our job and responsibility to explore maybe a lack of psychological safety. Then if there's an impact or a low level of psychological safety within an organisation, within a team, really valuable to have like external parties, someone like us at T2 to come in to help support and encourage and build the right conversations. But if there's someone who's critical to that, and they either are or aren't in the room, that's going to have a very different impact, because it might be that maybe it's a team who work together and there's a lack of an impact psychological safety. What impact is it going to have for that manager of the team to be in the mix? If that lack of psychological safety is stemming from things happening with the manager, then again, is it better to have them not involved so that people can speak freely? In order to tackle the issue, is it actually best to have them in the mix so that it can really have an open and honest conversation in a safe environment? Yeah,
what is that influence? What's the impact of that influence from that said individual? And I think we've done one recently where the decision was certain people would be around, certain people wouldn't, certain people would drop in and interact at key moments of the socials, not just in the learning areas. But as a result, when we did the mop up at the end, the Q&A, what did we take away from this? And that's obviously like part of the measures. One of the guys actually said, for us to close this gap, certain levels need to be in the mix to have these conversations, to deal with the challenge and to get involved at this level, to hear what we're thinking, the process that we go through to get the outcome, to understand the flow versus drudgery, if you like, of what that performance might come out as. And that was great because what they then realized was we've been put in a situation, given an environment to thrive with our colleagues, our peers, with the same levels of importance or the same levels of responsibility, accountability, to thrash this out. And now we've done that, we feel a little bit safer that we understand or we're understood. Now it's a case of going, the next one has to include everybody for us to take us to that next day. But had you had not done the first offsite,
Yeah, you're right.
I might never have got to that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I think that's a really great example, because that was just that was this month. We said just yesterday that particular event feels like it was forever ago, but it was this month, and that was a group of 30 to 40 leaders within an organisation. So kind of senior levels of leadership, so all coming together. And I think just for that particular group, just the ability for them to connect with people across that business and across the organisation. So collaboration was huge. That was a multi-day event, so that went across 2 days.
Yeah.
And even just having people stay over during the night, they had an evening meal, they had a guest speaker come, someone from a very different industry to them, come and do a bit of a talk with them. But even just the difference in the next day of they all had that kind of shared experience. They've all even just had a couple of
Lavners.
a couple of sherbets on an evening, just to help build that kind of bond and connection. But as you say, for them, I suppose the executive leadership team, they weren't involved in that. They were there at the start and at the end of the event, and there was a reason that was done on purpose. And actually next time, because we're already talking about their next leadership event, is it that actually in order to increase the collaboration and grow that psychological safety even further, actually we need not only the senior level leadership team, but we also need the execs involved as well.
And I think what the key, as soon as that was heard, firstly, I felt that's a fantastic comment because part of that gap has been bridged. But the other part for me was, that's a great opportunity to see things through a different lens.
Yeah.
How do we bring that layer into our layer and start to understand why they think that way, why we're being challenged this way, what's going to move us forward through their view, not just our view of, well, we're stuck and it can't be done. Because sometimes I think that level of exposure to somebody else's mindset, a different lens, as we say, more expertise, more tenure, more reps in the game, might make that difference. And it can be, you know this the same way I do, you can be caught in a conversation with another consultant about what that scenario might be for building something for someone. Then one person goes, oh, what are you talking about? That weren't in the beginning. And you'll say X, Y, and Z, but we're kind of stuck. And that person who's fresh to it goes, oh, well, what about?
Yeah.
And straight away it's like, oh, how have we not made that connection? And sometimes these views, that transparency of what's coming over the horizon added into their day-to-day grind really helps them understand, this is why we have to take accountability, this is why we have to be responsible, this is why these are the drivers, and this is why this is so important to move forward and get involved. So that skill set comes in and it's now blended, it's washed across everybody. Yeah. So it's a great opportunity for everyone.
It's again comes back into that increased collaboration again, and just the sheer importance of that collaboration and just the opportunity to strengthen existing relationships, but even just build those new connections and build those new relationships is really important, isn't it?
The networking part, and you've done it before yourself. You've gone away and met somebody and you've come back into the office and I've heard the conversation, and then you've spoken to Lydia about how that connection's been made. Lydia then joined the dots and said, I've worked with this person from that organisation and we've done this. Then you've gone into a different conversation about that organisation and it's helped you with how you've drawn the dots, because it's a shared experience. And coming back from those events, offsites, whatever you want to call them, but offsites for the topic, you get a great opportunity to really build on that collaborative work. What's next? And able to reach out to that new network, even if you haven't been there, because Lydia wasn't where you were, but it was able, or she was able to then add something of real detail to what you was doing.
Yeah.
So I think collaboration, improvement in network, building bonds, interaction, interpersonal skills, just building that or rebuilding that passion, that connectivity between humans can be a real big thing.
And I think when you look at offsites where it involves different bands, different levels, however you want to describe it, that's really important as well, because if you're running a large offsite, even sometimes just the opportunity to understand that you're more senior to me, but actually you're human. Because what's so fascinating all the time is people forget that. People think, oh, you're the CEO of this organization, and based on my position and my role, I only see you in certain situations, or I have limited contact with you. But in an offsite environment where we're out of the office, and even sometimes just the opportunity we're in a more relaxed environment, even down to people are more dressed, more kind of casual as well, is that opportunity for people to just understand that we're all human beings.
We get to strip away some of the barriers, obstacles that stop us from approaching these people, because like you say, they're now talking to someone I feel comfortable with. So let me go stand with a person I feel comfortable with and engage in that conversation. Before you know it, the other person's gone. Now it's a one-to-one.
Yeah.
So all of those opportunities arise.
And I think this is something that is so important. It's important now more than it ever has been, the impact of really good connections, relationships and collaboration, because just look at the amount of clients that we work with who don't work in that traditional, everyone's all based on one site in the same office. Yeah. People work hybrid. We've got so many clients, people work flexible. So it might be that we've all got only one office or kind of primary place or location of work. But because of flexible working, actually, you've got some people, they work a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Some people only work in the office on a Tuesday, on a Friday or a Wednesday. So therefore, they're never going to see each other. And this is always going to be a challenge with flexible and hybrid working, that it's great from an employee engagement perspective. It's great for well-being. It gives people the opportunity to have a better and stronger work-life balance, but it's not always best from a communication and collaboration perspective. Yeah. So therefore, I would say it's even more important to take into consideration, what are we doing about that? Is it that we need to host more offsite events, and that might be just a one-day workshop, or just a one day where face-to-face everyone's in on that day? Or is it something that's a bit more intense, or intense perhaps is the wrong word, something more immersive?
Submersive, yeah.
And it's a multi-day event.
Yeah, and listen, when we look at all the stuff we do, and we deliver virtually, we deliver face-to-face, we do it here at T2 Towers, or we go off-site and meet somewhere in the middle, or we go to their place of work. But ultimately, whenever you're in one, the feedback is often, how do we get face-to-face? And one of the other sides of it is, what did you enjoy most about the outputs? And it's always interaction. Yeah. The breakouts, the communication, working with colleagues I don't often see. That's always the feedback that comes back as one of the big highlights. And I think that's great. And then to double bank that, we've done a couple of different offsites for different clients, obviously. But like you said earlier on, we're already talking about what step 2 is for next year's. Yeah. Because once I've done one, they see the instant impact of what that is, the buzz, the energy that causes, the restirring of passions as to why I'm actually here and what I'm trying to achieve. And I can see people who have got that same energy level, and it re-engages them. So the return on investment just in energy and enthusiasm alone is huge. So as I say, we move into, when can we do the next one? And so that tells you a little bit about it. And we run our own retreat, and we do. We're looking at our third soon.
Yeah, and the T2 leadership retreat is, I suppose it's like the ultimate offsite. I would possibly describe it as, because it's the kind of word that is often used to describe it is it's immersive. Yes, it very much is. So the T2 leadership retreat, how many days is that?
So we have 3 days.
3 days, yeah.
And I think what we do well there, I think this is why it gets in there, and the feedback we get is fairly strong in the organisations, and people are often, can we come back for a second, etc. Is it was not about what's the goal. Now, obviously, we're bringing in 40 to 50 people from different organizations. Some might have 2 people from the same place, but different organizations from different industry sectors, private, public, sports elite, all completely out there. But what we do well is we lay the foundation of what the route map to success will be. The goal when they leave is reached.
Yes.
And the idea of how do we bring them in, and we create that journey for them. They walk through the door. You can see from the photos from soon as they walk through.
Scared.
Yeah, there's nervous, like you talk about, but the brain chemicals, cortisol's kicking in.
Yeah.
You know, who's this? The uncertainty of why am I here? Oh my God, what decision have I made? I'm in a room of 50 people I'd never met before.
Yes.
Then you have, you know, the bounds of energy that are coming from the consultants who are walking around and getting in the mix as well. So it can be quite intimidating as to who am I, who am I with? You know, we talk about a few different things, terror, etc. Who am I with? How am I going to move? How do I feel about it? Who's steering this journey for me?
Yeah.
And in the days we talk about how do we make it successful, and we build on that siloed moment and turn them into a part of a team.
Yeah. Because with the leadership retreat, and what was a massive shock and surprise for us. So I suppose for a bit of context in regards to if someone has never heard of the T2 leadership retreat. So we run it every year. So next year will be our 3rd leadership retreat. And it's an opportunity for people from all different types of sectors and industries to come to an immersive 3-day event where they explore self-awareness, really deep understanding of who they are and what influence does that have on them as a leader. And these are people who are at a very senior executive level of leadership, C-suite level. And the second day is all about teamship. So they're in groups, they go through kind of challenges. That's really important. If you want to bring people together and create high levels of trust, people need that shared experience and shared challenge.
We offer 2 options within that, but there's high thrill, there's high stakes.
High cortisol.
Absolutely. But with high challenge, high support. And that's exactly what we offer. And people come out of day 2 just with that emotion of, wow.
Yeah.
I've challenged myself, took myself out of that comfort zone.
Yeah.
I've relied on people I've only known for 24 hours.
Yeah.
And they've backed me. They've supported me. They've given me words of encouragement, or they've physically dragged me out the water.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And then the 3rd day is all about high performance. So actually debunking high performance, which we have a lot of conversations about in regards to what does that look like. But what's so fascinating, and as I said, it was a huge shock for all of us here at T2, was the bonds and connections that those people had. They were strangers on that first day, but just them, by being in that space, being in that environment, being able to completely disconnect from the day-to-day. These are people who run big, huge, large organizations. For some, it's a case of actually I'm the managing director of a very small organization, but even still, taking 3 days out is a massive commitment. But then to have all of this increased relationship and all of these different networks, and even now what I love, even kind of 2 years later, seeing on LinkedIn those people who would never have had the opportunity to work together or engage because they work in very different industries now have really good connections, and that's because of that offsite experience. Now that is definitely, I suppose, kind of the top level that we offer and provide. Sometimes, as you said earlier, it might just be that this is a team, or maybe even people who work for the same organization but don't work together, coming to just do a 1-day offsite, which is just running a workshop on whatever the topic might be. When it comes to the offsite, some people think that it's it's team building, happy clappy stuff. But I think a huge kind of thing to take into consideration is that you can't dismiss the value and impact that it has. And some of our events are team building and it's all about fun and engagement, but it still brings people together.
Absolutely. Listen, we've done keynotes where they've gone off site on a full day with their team, with again a structured resume of what they're going to get delivered. Our guys have gone in, a Martin, a T, a you, me, whoever. We've gone in, We impact that subject with the psychology behind it, how that underpins it, how does that work for them, what really gets them passionate, how might that view to the person next to them, and the journey they've gone on to be sat in that seat next to themselves. We get them working in a breakout, they then collaborate, they talk differently. We're throwing them into a different environment.
Yeah.
We're asking them slightly different questions. And the feedback we get from that interaction is crazy. And that's only an hour.
Yeah.
You know, that's massive as well, because again, you take people out their comfort zone where they're not willing to sit and just actually feel free to have a conversation with someone they weren't working with before.
Yeah.
And these connections are massive.
And it's the impact that that's then going to have to productivity. And we know at T2, if you've got a highly productive working environment, that's what leads to high levels of performance and great results. If you want a really productive working environment, people need to be communicating and collaborating really effectively. How do you build that collaboration and the strength of those relationships and bonds, sometimes in that completely different environment, learning about themselves or just playing some random activities? They're always the fun days for us, aren't they?
People are the lifeblood of any organisation. You have to keep them connected.
Yeah. So if we start thinking about kind of key considerations then,
Sure.
So if you're wanting to increase productivity, performance, collaboration in your organisation, what are the maybe kind of two things that we need to focus on?
I think whoever's organising it, whoever's putting it together has to really strategically, military-esque plan what the goal is and the journey to that goal.
Yes.
It has to be precision. You know, we've got a CEO who lives by the mantra when it's this time of year, devil's in the detail, you know, and we check it, we double check it and fine tooth comb and we'll check it again. And we make sure that everything we have is achievable within that short period of time, because we talk about 3 days and anyone listening will sit there and think 3 days, that's loads. It's like half a week or more. It flies. It's gone in no time. And breaking that day up into relevant, impactful sections of a day that engages and keeps 40 to 50 high-powered, highly motivated, highly engaged people engaged and wanting to be engaged is a difficult task. It's not easy work. So, you know, the planning, the subject, the content, the delivery of which, the timing, how you lay what goes first, what comes middle, what comes end, you know, the work hard part with the support piece is where do we have fun and where do we break it down? Where's our downtime? You know, we can, what's the best way to pace set at high speed throughout the full 3, but at some point you're going to have to pump the brakes. You have to give them their time to gather this stuff in, because we hit them with a lot of information in very short periods of time in high pressure scenarios for it to land. And we don't give them too much time to rest on their laurels or to recoup, if that makes sense. Everything's high intensity. So it's mapping that out. What does good look like to you? What's the goal supposed to be? How are you going to strategically plan that? Who's important in planning that? And making sure that you've got the right people delivering it would be the first function for me.
Yeah, definitely. It's almost like that. I consider it as the pre-event plan.
Yeah.
So what is it that you're trying to achieve? Really important. And what is it that you need? So coming back to this article on HBR, a massive aspect for them was to explore and understand the needs of the team, because that's so key. And of course, this is where we step in to help and support. Yeah. So when we're speaking with our clients, a lot of the conversation is around that, really exploring and thinking about actually what is it that you need? Why is it that you think that you need this offsite? Yeah. What is it that you're trying to achieve? How are you going to measure it yourself? Kind of what does good look like for you? What's happened currently in the past? That then shapes, as you say, the structure, the content, and what it then looks like. And that will then shape for us, is it that we need to have conversations about this? Or actually, maybe they just need an opportunity to just take a step out and breathe, because I'm sure every single person either watching or listening to this podcast right now can connect that life is so fast-paced Fast-paced and energetic is how I just describe crazy busy.
Yeah.
It's, I suppose, a slightly more positive way of looking at it. But life is fast-paced and energetic.
Yeah.
Outside of work, inside of work. Sometimes just having the opportunity to have a day out of the normal day-to-day and just engage and do some silly games with your peers and colleagues that you work with? Or is it that actually we're having this really intense meeting because there's a problem that we really need to deep dive and explore? That's going to be look very different, but that's where we're here to help and support, to identify what is it that you need and how do we then start to build and map that out. You mentioned earlier, Scott, about who's involved.
Yeah.
That's key again, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's how you word this, because I don't want it to sound wrong, but the general gist here for me is, if you used to hold a meeting as an example, you wouldn't invite the world to a
Tom,
meeting.
Dick and Harry.
You wouldn't, there might be 20 people in the business, but for that set subject, for that meeting, with the outputs of what that meeting needs to deliver, you would involve only the relevant people. And it's the same thing here. Who are we inviting? Who are we sending to this offsite? Why are they going to be there? What's their impact? What's their influence? What's their leadership style? How are they going to manage themselves within that environment? All of those things have to add up to what success might look like.
Yeah.
And how they're doing it. And it might be that, you take 10 people who are over a level you can trust, and you bring somebody in who's maybe not to the experience of them. So they're going to learn from it. There may be somebody on the outside that needs to learn from them and needs to reconnect with this peer group for other reasons. But ultimately is how you offset it. What's the balance? Do you get it right? Are the right people in the room? And the why.
Yeah, and how are you communicating that why is so important, because again, we said right at the very beginning of this podcast, for some people, just their awareness that they've got something in that calendar, they know that they're going to an offsite. If there's no context or detail on what it's about, why they're going, who's going to be there, for some people, immediately cortisol, so much so that some people will then avoid it, not even show up and attend because of that lack of clarity. So when it comes to that kind of pre-event planning, what is it you're trying to achieve? What's the goal? What's the need?
Yeah.
Where are we going to have it? Because that's really important.
Yeah.
What does that environment look like so that we can have a safe environment? Who's involved? Is it that actually there's going to be value in having an external party there? And that's where your friends at T2 come into the picture. But how are we then communicating all of this to people before the event is even taking place, whatever the event is?
Yeah. And it is, how do we create the perfect environment? What does good look like? This was a cake, you're really considering the right measurements for each ingredient, and it has to be bob on.
Yes.
It really does. And as I say, so in prepping is one thing, but then who we invite is another, because, if the ingredients are not right, it can be a foul tasting cake, right?
Definitely. So the pre-event plan, number one, we've covered off some of the key things and considerations for that. Would it also be right in saying that post-event is just as important?
Absolutely. Yeah. Even like I mentioned earlier on in one of the offsites we did, the mop up at the end, the Q&A at the end, and how that came across, the learning from that group of people and the mind switch of who should be in the next one, why it's important for them to be in the next one, and what they could take away from the next one is massive. So what is that mop up? What does it look like? How's it gone? How do we measure how it was received? Firstly. Secondly, what was supposed to be the takeaways? What was the planned goal for the takeaways? And then we got to look at, how do we make sure that people have taken away what they should have and embed that?
Yes.
So what are the ownerships? What are the actions? What are the time frames at this point? How do we then, as an internal organization, measure that? How do we follow up on that? How do we make sure we remain constructive and we don't let it die a death? You've got to keep the energy under it. You've got to keep the momentum moving. Whilst you've got them in this place, you've got to make sure there's engagement sessions where, how did it work? What did it work for you? How did you live with that? What have you taken away from it? What are you going to do with it? How might you communicate that across your team? How might we measure that? What do you foresee as the potential uplift in this? Okay, that sounds great. Right, now, how do we follow that journey? And how do we ensure we deliver that uplift? Because that's the key point.
Yeah.
And it's making sure you as an organization don't just think you've had a successful offsite and that's it. It's not. There's probably as much work, if not more work, and the devil again will be in the detail of how you measure that structure, because there's no point in spending this money and bringing these people into this situation if we're not going to really drive the outcome and follow up on how it's delivered.
And I suppose it ties into that kind of the pre-event planning as well. So, for example, is it that we're trying to boost the employee engagement survey and aspects of that? Is it that we're trying to increase collaboration? What tools, how do we ensure that people have the right opportunity to collaborate? Is it that we're wanting to improve customer experience? In which case, how are we going to measure that? So what does it look like right now? What's the current kind of status of that? And in 6 months kind of post the event, what is it that we want it to be, or where do we want it to be? And how are we going to support people post training, workshop, meeting, whatever that event looks like?
Pre-work to it. And it can be even as simple as re-engaging with our culture.
Yeah.
Who are we?
Yeah.
As an organization, as a badge, as a shield, as a motto. Who are we? What are we doing? Are we still on track for this? Are we still representing this? Is that badge, are we still a reflection of that badge, of that motto, of that shield? And are we amplifying what that culture is to those that are within the organization, but those who live off the organization? That might be Joe Public, that might be shareholder, whoever it is. Are we doing everything we can to engage in that? And it'll come across a number of different levels.
Definitely. And what was quite interesting in the article when we were looking at that, so the research that they did, so they studied a particular organisation and really looked at how they worked and operated, how they communicated, how they collaborated prior to the event, and then measured it afterwards. About 750 employees in total, but just within the first 2 months, they saw a return on investment of over 180K.
Yeah.
Significant difference, a significant impact. And I think, again, it comes down to that, don't discredit the value of an offsite, but how are you going to measure it, and what does that look like, and how are you going to support people? Because I'm sure you can connect with this as well. The amount of times that I've had consulting conversations with people, both internally and externally, throughout my career, where people believe that we've got a problem, an offsite's going to fix it, but then we're not going to do anything after it. People think that just that one day, half a day, 3 days, however many days it is going to solve things.
Right.
Not always the case, because it's what happens before at the event, but what happens after is just as important.
You can look at our retreat, you can look at the offsites for the two of the clients that we've held. There are light bulbs flashing throughout all of the days. People are taking, wow, didn't think of it that way. That's an amazing bit. That's so simple. Oh my God, I didn't view it through that lens. And there's light bulbs flashing. But if you don't keep that current flowing when they come out of that environment, and ask the questions and engage those people and be curious about how can I take something away from what you present, then light bulbs will start to dim again.
Yeah.
And they'll stop flashing.
Yeah.
So, it's your responsibility as the holder, the organizer, the presenter of that offsite to make sure that the measurements are in place to deliver. And accountability is key. You can't just throw them in there and let them have the fun of what that might have given without giving some hard work to deliver the inputs, the outputs, the needed at the other side, right? Ownership, actions, time frames. Let's really use that.
Definitely. And also as well, just understanding that, again, that increase in collaboration and connection with the people, and the value that brings. So in the article, they mentioned that after the event, attendees saw the biggest impact, and they received 24% more new incoming collaborative work requests compared to before the offsite, because they've had that opportunity to meet you for the first time, to just build a little bit of human to human connection and rapport. And I now know that you're the person that I can ask questions to or support in this particular aspect, with this knowledge, with this field, because you're the expert. Yes. And just the impact that alone is going to have. So if we start to summarize this then, so an offsite could be anything. It might be Fun, happy, clappy team building, still value in that. It might be an opportunity to really explore and discuss and get kind of quite in depth in regards to a problem or a challenge that a team and organization is facing. It could be for that team of people who work together. Could be for people who don't work together. They work across. It might be people who work in different locations, and it's about bringing that clarity and awareness and just growing that.
When we think about how is it to be successful, sometimes just viewing it through your lens as an organization might not be enough. Lean on somebody else to give you a different view, and that might mean external, it just gives you a chance.
So think about the pre-event planning. What does that look like? And then post. So take into consideration the things that need to happen in order to really create the space and opportunity for people to thrive post event.
Keep those engagement levels high.
Yeah.
And bring them back together.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be offsite at that point, but just getting those engagement sessions back in once every 6 months.
Yeah.
Where are we at? What we're doing? What do we need to stand on? What do we need to let go? All of that good stuff.
Yeah. Sounds good. And as we said earlier, don't discredit the impact that an offsite can have and the sheer value that it can have as well. So in regards to the article stating that offsites do work, would you agree with that statement?
Absolutely. I'm wholeheartedly behind it.
Yeah, me too. And I suppose if we're speaking to our people who are watching this, because it has been recorded, or if you're just listening to this podcast and you feel as though your team, your organization could benefit from an offsite, whatever that might look like, then
and whatever guys that may be, workshop, keynote, unity, into an offsite itself, a few days away.
Then definitely get in touch, because it's what we're here for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fab. Well, Scott, I've really enjoyed our first podcast together ever after I've been working at T2 over a year and a half.
Yeah, very good, very enlightening. You have a lovely voice.
Oh, thank you. Is that because I don't have a whole accent?
I'm not sure.
I love the whole accent.
I'm not sure.
You do have a lovely voice, Scott. So thanks for your time today.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, and we'll be back soon for another People Performance Podcast.
Okay, be safe.